Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, well, a dynamic that feels like it's ripped straight from some kind of political drama.
Mm.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Mm.
We've gathered a stack of material on their evolving relationship, and honestly, it's quite a wild ride.
It really is, yeah. What started as something of a, let's say, cautious alliance has morphed into this very public, very loud clash.
Right.
And as we dig into the sources, it's clear this isn't just about two powerful personalities. It reflects much bigger tensions at play right now.
Like what?
Well, the friction between the worlds of politics and cutting-edge tech. The collision of massive egos, for sure, but also competing forms of influence.
Absolutely. It's more than just a feud. It's almost a symptom of how power itself is shifting.
Yeah.
So, okay, where did this whole story begin? Because you might be surprised to hear it wasn't always this adversarial thing.
No, not at all. Let's rewind to the very beginning. Right. If we look back at the early days of the Trump presidency, something quite interesting happened. Elon Musk, far from being the vocal critic we often see today, actually accepted an invitation
To what?
to join Trump's Economic Advisory Council. This was back in 2016.
2016. Wow. Seems like a different era now, doesn't it? What was the thinking there? From Musk's side, I mean, this looks like a pretty strategic calculation.
Oh, definitely. The goal for Musk was clear. He wanted a direct line, sort of, to influence U.S. policy.
Makes sense, given his businesses.
Exactly. Think about the industries he's in: sustainable energy, electric vehicles, space exploration. He wanted a seat at the table, basically, to push for things like EV incentives, support for space innovation, that kind of thing.
So joining that council was his way in.
It was a way to potentially nudge policy, yeah,
Right.
in a direction favorable to Tesla and SpaceX.
And Trump, coming into the White House from the business world, he seemed pretty eager to associate himself with prominent entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It was about bringing perceived business acumen, into the Oval Office, surrounding himself with successful figures.
Mm-hmm.
There's this idea highlighted in the material we looked at that Trump saw Musk as someone bringing, like, the future in a bottle. He admired his genius, the image of success he projected.
So this initial connection,
Mm.
it wasn't really about them sharing deep political beliefs then.
Hmm.
Sounds more transactional.
That's the key takeaway, I think. This alliance wasn't built on shared ideology. Not really. It was primarily about mutual utility.
How so?
Well, Trump benefited from, rubbing shoulders with Musk's success, and Musk saw an opportunity to potentially influence policy that mattered deeply to his companies. It was strategic alignment.
Not a deep political bond.
Not necessarily, no.
Got it. A mutually beneficial arrangement. But these things often have expiration dates, don't they? When did we start seeing the first signs of trouble, the first cracks?
Yeah, the first significant crack we see appears around 2017, and the trigger event was pretty specific. Trump pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Ah, okay, that makes perfect sense. Given Musk's heavy investment in EVs and sustainable energy, that decision must have felt like a direct hit to his core interests.
Absolutely.
How did he react?
Well, this was his cue to exit, as one analysis put it. He didn't just quietly slip away either.
No.
No, he made a very public statement resigning from Trump's advisory council. And he was very direct about his reasons. He tweeted about it, didn't he? I remember that. What was the exact wording again?
Yes, he tweeted, "Climate change is real. Leaving Paris is not good for America or the world." Pretty unambiguous.
Yeah, no kidding. A clear break with a major administration decision. And from that moment, the relationship shifted, right? It wasn't an immediate blow up, but things definitely changed.
Right. It moved from that, strategic alliance into what you might call a quiet estrangement.
Estrangement, good word.
Musk became more openly critical sometimes of certain Trump policy decisions, particularly those related to science or large government spending.
But they kept it civil,
Mhm.
mostly.
They maintained a degree of civility, yeah, for a while, especially while Trump was still in office.
Yeah.
The dynamic really changed after Trump left the White House and, critically, as Musk's own influence just kept growing and growing.
Which brings us to a key turning point, right? Looking at the period around 2022 and 2023. This is when we see Musk undergo a pretty significant transformation.
Yeah, he really did. He went from being this, highly influential tech CEO who occasionally advised politicians to something well, something far more overtly political.
Hmm.
The material we read describes this period as his evolution into a political provocateur.
And the biggest piece of that transformation was obviously buying Twitter.
Absolutely. Acquiring Twitter and then, rebranding it to X, that was a massive move.
Huge.
He suddenly controlled this global platform for public discourse, and you couple that with his declared stance as a free speech absolutist, and he was suddenly in this unique position to influence the whole conversation.
And he started using that position actively, didn't he?
Mm.
Hosting presidential candidates on X Spaces, weighing in directly on really contentious issues like immigration, openly mocking government processes.
Yep.
He wasn't just building rockets or cars anymore. He was actively playing in the political arena.
Right. And during this time, Trump, who is obviously, extremely sensitive to shifts in influence and public attention, he must have been watching Musk's rising profile pretty closely.
What was Trump's perspective on this, based on what we've seen? Any insight there?
Well, the analysis suggests Trump likely viewed Musk's increasing sway as both a threat and maybe a direct challenge.
How so?
Well, here is another figure with this massive following waiting on to what Trump considers his turf, right? Public attention influence.
Right.
Interestingly, though, despite this potential tension, Trump largely remained publicly quiet during this specific phase. The full-blown conflict hadn't quite erupted yet.
But it was building. You could feel it. And according to the material, things finally exploded at a very specific moment.
That moment is pinpointed in May 2025. And the trigger, interestingly, wasn't a tweet this time, but comments Musk made during a speech
Where?
at a tech summit.
Okay, what did he say that set Trump off?
He directly criticized Trump's reckless spending, said it straight out.
Wow.
Musk specifically stated that the national debt had ballooned unsustainably during Trump's term. And then he added a more pointed warning
Which was?
that Trump's return to office could actually destabilize American innovation.
Oof. That's a pretty direct hit.
Yeah.
Targeting not just Trump's economic record, but potentially his whole image as this business-savvy leader.
It was bold, a public challenge from someone with immense reach, and Trump, well, predictably wasn't about to let that just slide.
How did Trump hit back on Truth Social, I assume?
Yep, he fired back on his platform, Truth Social, and he went straight for the personal insults, called Musk a boring, overrated businessman,
Ouch.
and claimed Musk owes everything to government subsidies. That last part clearly aimed at undermining Musk's whole self-made billionaire narrative.
But Musk clapped back instantly, didn't he?
He did, and his comeback via a tweet on X was a sharp personal jab of his own.
What do you say?
He tweeted, "At least I can build something without inheriting it."
Oh, wow. Okay. The gloves were officially off then.
Absolutely. At that point, it just escalated into what's been described as a full-blown billionaire blood sport.
Okay, so we've traced this fascinating path, right? From strategic partners almost to public enemies. But let's take a step back for a second and ask, why should you, listening right now, care about this? Is this just, rich guys beefing on the internet?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And the material makes it abundantly clear. No, this feud is much more than just personal drama. It's a very visible symptom of some really profound shifts happening in power dynamics today.
Let's break down those larger implications then. First, there's this growing tension you mentioned between sort of traditional politics and the tech elite.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is how figures like Musk are starting to position themselves. It's like they're not just seeing themselves as innovators anymore.
Right.
They're almost acting as governance alternatives. You see Musk trying to be more than just a CEO, setting himself up as this kind of philosopher king of free speech and infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
It really blurs the lines between private wealth and public influence in a new way.
And both men have this incredible ability, maybe unique ability, to command attention and influence huge groups of people.
That's a massive factor. Both Trump and Musk have what you might call cult followings. I mean, people are fiercely loyal to them.
Totally.
So this feud doesn't just play out between them, it actually divides their audiences. And it also highlights a split happening within the modern conservative movement itself.
How so?
Well, you have the older populist guard, right, represented by Trump, kind of clashing with this newer wave of, let's call it techno-libertarianism that Musk seems to embody.
Interesting. And the battleground itself is significant. It's happening primarily online, on social media.
Exactly. Social media, particularly X, isn't just where they fight. It functions as a weapon in this conflict.
A weapon.
Yeah. Think about it. Trump built so much of his political brand on platforms like Twitter, and now Musk literally controls that space. It raises real questions about narrative control, who gets to shape the conversation?
It also feels like a clash between two very different visions for the American economy, doesn't it?
It does. You've got Trump representing maybe a focus on traditional industries, on economic nationalism.
America first.
Right. And Musk, on the other hand, he symbolizes this transnational tech-driven disruption thinking about space, AI, global connectivity. Their conflict, in part, really reflects these fundamentally different ideas about where the country should be headed economically.
So this isn't just digital noise. It has real-world fallout. What have we seen in terms of impact on the political landscape?
Okay, if we look at the political side, the material points to a noticeable split emerging within the Republican Party itself. Yeah. Some hardline Mad GA loyalists, they view Musk as a kind of globalist sellout, not truly aligned with their base.
Seeing him as part of the elite,
Yeah.
the establishment they often rail against.
Precisely. But then there's this other faction within the conservative landscape that actually sees Musk as a potential counterweight to Trump's populism.
Interesting. Why?
They might admire his business success, his stance on certain cultural issues, maybe his tech focus, even if they don't fully embrace the whole ManGA platform. He offers something different.
And how are Democrats viewing all this? Just sitting back with popcorn.
Hey, well, the reporting suggests some Democrats are finding a certain amount of, let's say, enjoyment in it.
I bet.
After years of frequent clashes with Musk over policy and his platform decisions, seeing him publicly sparring with Trump is described as a somewhat popcorn-worthy moment for some on the left.
Okay, beyond politics, what about the impact on the business world? Investors.
Oh, investors are definitely watching nervously. There have been reports, for instance, of Tesla stock dipping right after Musk made those critical comments about Trump spending.
And there's concern about potential repercussions for Musk's other companies, like SpaceX.
Absolutely. There's a real question floating around about what could happen if Trump were to return to power.
Like what?
Investors worry that significant government contracts, which are, let's face it, crucial for companies like SpaceX and Starlink, could be jeopardized.
As retaliation.
As a form of political retaliation against a vocal critic like Musk.
Yeah.
Because the potential for retaliation seems very real in this dynamic. It's not just talk.
It feels real. The analysis highlights that a re-elected Trump would have various levers he could potentially pull.
Such as?
Things like pursuing tech regulations, specifically targeting Musk's companies, initiating antitrust actions, or even manipulating federal subsidies that companies like Tesla have benefited from in the past. This isn't just theoretical. It's a genuine concern hanging over the business landscape. Shifting gears slightly to media and public reaction. I mean, this drama feels tailor-made for headlines, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The media is understandably loving this, as one piece put it.
Of course.
It's two global figures, high-stakes conflict, shark insults, headlines like Techno King versus the Don practically write themselves. It's just compelling narrative.
But what's happening among their followers and maybe the wider public,
Yeah.
that's perhaps even more telling, right?
It is, yeah. On X, Musk's own platform, you see this open split, with users actively choosing sides, hashtag Team Trump versus hashtag Team Musk. People are participating in this digital battle in real time.
Taking sides.
Definitely. And on other platforms like Reddit or YouTube, you see more commentary emerging that's kind of cynical, focusing on the idea of billionaires being out of touch or simply playing kingmaker with their vast wealth and influence.
And there's that weird meta layer to it all that you touched on.
Right. Musk literally owns the platform where a huge part of this feud is unfolding. He controls the space, the rules of engagement, the visibility of messages.
It's like being one of the fighters while also owning the entire arena.
Exactly. Controlling the ring, the gloves, even deciding how the replays are shown. It's unique.
And while Trump is pushing his platform, Truth Social, a lot of this still plays out on Musk's turf, on X.
Yeah, Trump is definitely trying to draw his audience over to Truth Social, but the gravitational pull of X as the central hub for political conversation remains incredibly strong. It makes it hard for him to completely escape Musk's domain in this fight.
So where does this go from here? Any predictions based on the material we reviewed? Does it just fizzle out?
The strong indication is no. This feud is probably not ending anytime soon.
And why is that? What's driving it?
Well, for a couple of key reasons identified in the analysis. One, both men thrive on attention. It's absolutely central to their public personas and their power.
True.
Two, they also both genuinely seem to believe they are, in some way, saviors of America, but they have radically different ideas about what that means and how to achieve it.
Polar opposite visions, maybe.
Could be. Plus, they both have very immediate agendas driving them right now. Trump's focused on the presidency in 2025, obviously. And Musk is clearly invested in shaping the political landscape leading up to that, influencing who gets there. Their ambitions are just fundamentally clashing.
Which makes you wonder who ultimately benefits from this ongoing conflict.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe billion-dollar question here. Does the public benefit?
Does it?
Maybe. Potentially, I suppose, if the clash forces more open debate about crucial issues like government spending or technological innovation or even the very nature of leadership in the 21st century. But that's a big if.
The media seems like a clear winner, though.
Definitely. As we mentioned, the headlines and ratings suggest the media benefits from the sheer drama of it all. It drives clicks, views.
Engagement.
Exactly. But for the country as a whole, that's much, much murkier.
And there's this underlying concern that the material points to, isn't there? Something a bit darker.
Yes, the potentially dangerous undertone. If we see power increasingly concentrated in the hands of unelected figures like Musk, whose influence stems primarily from wealth and platform control,
Right.
and if elected leaders increasingly act like internet influencers, focused mainly on winning online battles, then a really fundamental question arises. What happens to democratic accountability?
Who are these powerful figures truly accountable to?
Exactly. It's a vital point. It elevates this from just a personal spat, billionaire versus billionaire, to a real case study in modern power dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. The analysis synthesizes it quite well. The Trump-Musk feud is this powerful lens revealing how charisma and code, personality, and technology are colliding and reshaping power struggles in the 21st century.
It's a clash of titans, for sure.
But it also shows us critical things about the future of influence, maybe even governance, in our digitally connected world.
So what began as this unlikely, almost pragmatic partnership, right?
Right.
Between the businessman president and the rocket man.
Yeah. Has definitely fractured into a very public, very high-stakes breakup.
And like a lot of public breakups, the analysis suggests it ends up revealing maybe as much about the audience, us, watching and taking sides, as it does about the individuals involved.
We'll certainly be keeping an eye on this drama as it unfolds. I mean, how can you not? But not just for the sheer spectacle,
Right.
but for what it continues to teach us about who holds the reins of power today, how they wield it, and ultimately what that means for all of us.
Yeah, this whole clash forces us to confront some pretty uncomfortable questions. Questions about where influence truly lies now and whether our traditional systems of accountability are actually keeping pace with these rapid technological and political changes.
That feels like a powerful thought to leave with. That's our deep dive into the Trump-Musk dynamic for today. Stay curious, stay sharp.
And stay grounded in the chaos.